Hey there. Ready to dive into something really interesting? It's causing a lot of buzz in the world of higher education.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
We're talking about legacy admissions,
Yeah, yeah.
and specifically, California's recent decision to say, nope, not doing that anymore.
Big move. And a lot of people are watching to see what happens next. You know how it is.
For sure. So for those who might not be totally up to speed, let's break it down. What are legacy admissions and why are they causing such a stir?
Right.
Basically, it's like giving certain applicants a bit of an edge in the admissions process just because they have family members.
Like parents or grandparents who went to that same school.
Exactly. Think like generations of a family all going to Harvard or Yale.
And it sparked this whole debate about fairness. Does having a family legacy actually give you a leg up in admissions?
Right. They tip the scales.
Is it even fair to those who don't have that kind of background?
And California just made a huge decision. They're the second state in the U.S., after Maryland.
Wow, only the second.
Yep, to officially ban legacy admissions. And not just at public universities, at private ones, too.
So we're talking big names, Stanford, USC, the whole 9 yards.
Yep, they're all under the microscope now with this law coming into effect in 2025.
Which is interesting timing, right? I mean, this comes right on the heels of the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action.
Oh, absolutely. That whole thing really shook things up in college admissions. It's almost like states are like, okay, let's double check everything and make sure it's totally fair.
Yeah. No room for anything that looks like discrimination.
Right. And California's not messing around.
How so?
If a university tries to skirt this new law, there aren't any huge fines.
Oh, interesting. So how do they enforce it?
They're going public. Any school caught breaking the ban will be publicly named.
Ah, so it's more about accountability, public pressure,
Exactly. Their reputation is on the line.
which can be a powerful motivator, let me tell you.
For sure. And get this law got support from both sides of the aisle. Democrats and Republicans in California actually agreed on this.
Wow. Bipartisan agreement on something as controversial as college admissions, that's practically unheard of these days.
Right. It shows how much this idea of fairness in education resonates with people.
People want a system that's actually merit-based, where everyone has a fair shot, regardless of their family history.
Couldn't agree more. But of course, not everyone's totally on board with ditching legacy admissions entirely. We found this really interesting perspective from a Stanford student on LinkedIn, actually.
What did they say?
They argued that getting rid of legacy admissions might not actually lead to more diversity.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, they believe these legacies, they bring a sense of shared history to a university,
Hmm.
tradition, community. All those things factor into a school's identity.
And let's be real, those legacy families, they often become big donors later on.
Very true. Universities definitely keep that in mind.
Hmm.
But then you have schools that have already gotten rid of legacy preferences years ago.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Johns Hopkins University.
Yeah.
And guess what happened?
Did their reputation plummet?
Not at all. Their socioeconomic diversity actually went up.
Really? So it didn't hurt them at all?
Nope. And their academic standards stayed just as high.
Huh. That kind of challenges the idea that you need legacy admissions to maintain high standards, doesn't it?
Exactly. It suggests that there might be other, fairer ways to build a diverse student body without resorting to, who your grandparents were.
It makes you think, if Johns Hopkins can do it.
Why not everyone? Right.
Exactly. Okay, and remember that Supreme Court case we mentioned earlier, the one about affirmative action?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there was this really interesting scenario Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson brought up during that case.
Okay.
And it's actually become super relevant to this whole legacy admissions debate.
Really? Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine this. Two applicants, both amazing students.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Top grades, incredible extracurriculars. They both got it going on.
Okay, so what's the catch?
One applicant is black, the other is white.
Go
The
ahead.
white applicant's family,
Yeah.
generations of alumni from that university.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. Justice Jackson used this example to show how giving an advantage to legacy applicants can accidentally create a system where some groups have a built-in head start.
It's like an unspoken advantage.
Exactly. Even if there aren't specific rules saying you're in because of your family, it still creates an uneven playing field.
It did make people stop and think.
And we actually found this LinkedIn post by Molly McGuire, who helped to write the California legislation. She specifically mentioned Justice Jackson's scenario as being a turning point.
Wow. So it had a real impact.
It gave the fight against legacy admissions a shot in the arm.
It's amazing how one thought experiment can spark a whole movement.
Totally. It's like it gave people the words to talk about something they already felt was unfair. And now that California's taken this step, it makes you wonder, will other states follow suit?
Will we see a domino effect?
It's possible. California is often a trendsetter, especially in education. Other states might feel pressure to rethink their policies, especially if California's ban is successful.
And it's not just about state-level action. Remember that whole varsity blues scandal?
Oh, how could we forget?
Wealthy parents getting their kids into elite schools? It really exposed the dark side of college admissions.
And legacy preferences, even though they're not as blatant as bribery, they still got lumped into that whole conversation about unfair advantages.
For sure. Because at the end of the day, it's about who has access and who doesn't. And a 2022 Pew Research Center poll found that a huge chunk of Americans, something like 75%, believe that family connections shouldn't matter in college admissions.
That's a pretty clear message, right? People want a system that values merit over connections.
Absolutely. So it seems like we're witnessing a huge shift in how we think about college admissions, about education in general.
We're moving towards a system where your accomplishments are your own, not just your family's.
And this could change everything about how colleges build their student bodies. Maybe we'll see more focus on economic background, where you grew up, or even just the unique experiences you bring to the table. I was actually reading an article the other day about a university testing out a lottery system for admissions.
A lottery.
Yep. Among students who meet certain academic standards, of course.
That's wild. It really throws the whole idea of selectivity out the window.
It's like a whole new world for higher education.
Ugh.
And like any big change, there will be challenges, people pushing back. But the conversation about fairness in college admissions, that's not going away anytime soon.
It's an ongoing process, an evolution. It's like she really put her finger on something people were feeling but couldn't quite express.
And now, well, California's taken this big step. It makes you wonder, are other states going to follow suit?
It's definitely a possibility. California often sets the tone for these kinds of things, especially in education.
Right, like what happens in California.
Doesn't stay in California, exactly. Other states, they might start feeling the heat, especially if California's ban actually works the way people hope.
And remember that whole varsity blues thing a few years back?
Oh, yeah, the college admissions scandal.
It really showed how some wealthy parents were trying to,
Game the system.
exactly, to get their kids into these top-tier schools.
And legacy preferences, they might not be as bad as, like, outright bribery, but
It's all part of the same problem, right?
yeah, it's about who has advantages, who has access, and who doesn't.
And a 2022 Pew Research Center poll, they found that a whopping 75% of American adults, they think family ties to a school shouldn't matter when it comes to getting in.
Wow, 75%. That's a pretty clear message.
Right. People want a system that's fair, where everyone has a shot based on their own merits.
Absolutely. And it feels like we're in the middle of a massive change in how we even think about college, about education. It's not just about getting into the best school anymore.
It's about making sure everyone has a fair chance, no matter what their background is, no matter who their family is.
Exactly. And that could change everything about how colleges build their student bodies. We might see more emphasis on where you grew up, your economic background, even those unique life experiences that you bring to the table.
I was reading about this one university. They're trying out a lottery system for admissions.
A lottery. You're kidding.
Nope. Of course, it's only for students who meet certain academic requirements first. But still, it's a really different way of looking at things.
Wow. That really shakes things up.
Right. It's like we're on the verge of a revolution in higher education.
Mhm.
And like with any revolution, there are going to be some growing pains. Some people will resist.
Oh, for sure. But this conversation about fairness in college, it's not going away anytime soon.
It's an ongoing evolution.
It really makes you think about what really matters when it comes to education.
It really does.
How do we create a system that's actually fair to everyone?
Exactly. And I think that's the big question here. We've talked about California's ban. We've looked at what the courts are saying, what people think.
Yeah.
But what happens now? Is this the start of something bigger?
It could be. Imagine a world where colleges, they're competing for students based on the quality of their programs, on how diverse their campuses are.
Instead of how many generations of one family have walked through those halls.
Right, exactly.
It's like we're shifting toward a system where your achievements, they're your own. You earned them.
You're not just riding your family's coattails.
Exactly. And maybe this whole thing, it could push universities to think differently about how they create a diverse student body.
Maybe we'll see more emphasis on things like socioeconomic background,
Right.
your personal story, what makes you you.
It's not just about grades and test scores anymore. It's about what you bring to the table as a whole person.
Absolutely.
And hey, remember that university experimenting with a lottery for admissions? The one we talked about
Oh,
earlier?
yeah, yeah. The lottery system, that's a wild idea.
It really makes you question everything we thought we knew about college
Well,
admissions.
for sure. I mean, it challenges those traditional ideas of prestige and selectivity.
It's like, what if we just leveled the playing field completely?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that's the future of higher education.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into legacy admissions.
And it's been a fascinating conversation.
It really has. We've covered a lot of ground here. California's groundbreaking ban, the Supreme Court's rulings, what the public thinks about all of this. Hopefully this is giving you some food for thought about this whole issue. It's a big one.
And maybe even inspired some of you to get involved, make your voices heard.
Because at the end of the day, this is about the future of education.
And who gets a seat at the table.
So until next time, keep those minds curious, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.